Do you look like my stepsister working on Fridays when you squat? Well, then this video is for you. I'll go over the 2 keys to avoiding a good morning squat: building your quads and mastering the descent. First one, building your quads. People assume because the good morning squat is pitching you forwards, it must be hip or glute weakness. This is wrong though, it's the opposite. In a squat, we don't get near our maximal hip extension demands, but we do hit maximal knee extension demands. Once we have maxed out our knee extensors, we have to use our hip extensors to lift more weight, hence we have to lean forwards to engage them. How much we can lean forwards is limited by our spinal extension strength, mainly our upper back, how far we can bend before our chest collapses. If you work on strengthening your quads, they will be able to handle more load before the body needs to start leaning to recruit more of the hip extensors. You can do this with isolation work or variations like high bar and front squats that will disadvantage the hip and spinal extensors, making your squat more quad dominant. This brings me to the second part, mastery the descent. We want to end up in this more bent over position on our descent so that when we bounce out of the hole, we don't rapidly shift positions. But if you're the type of person that's just looking to squat the most weight, like most powerlifters, I wouldn't try to resist it. It is letting us use more musculature, it's not taken away from the quads, they are still at maximal demands, we just have more hip and spinal extensor involvement. This rapid shift in position can really throw you off right at the hardest point of squat, right above parallel on the way up. So how do we end up in a more bent over position? It isn't necessarily as simple as just bending over more, though honestly, sometimes that does work. 2 main issues I see though are people overarching their spine or losing mid-foot balance. Now, arching the spine when you squat can be a good thing. I do it when I squat. It can bring the bar closer to the hips to shorten the moment arm for hip and spinal extension. It can also push your stomach out, jamming it into your legs and hips, which may allow for more bounce out of the hole. Or the other issue is it may limit our hip flexion, which is the root issue here. Remember how we said the good morning squat is our body trying to use our hip extensors more? If we limit hip flexion in this way, we limit the hip extensors, and conversely, we have to use more knee flexion in order to achieve depth, loading our quads. But remember, this is the opposite of what we want. In order to lift more weight, we have to shift some load from our knee extensors to our hip extensors. This is why the knees often shoot backwards, causing that rapid shift forwards to load our hip extensors more. The knee cave often associated with this also puts our glutes and adductors in a stronger position to extend the hip. So how do we fix this? First off, try focusing on a neutral pelvis. Pelvis and low back position are heavily tied together, and keeping the pelvis neutral should keep the lower back more neutral. And think of tucking your ribcage downwards. This will shift your center of mass and take some getting used to, but it will be worth it in the long run if you have this issue. If you arch your spine but do not have a good morning squat, I would just keep doing what you're doing. So other than this arch back position, the other issue is midfoot balance. Now this can be several causes, including the arch spine issue we just talked about, in which case just don't squat like LeBron. It can be from trying to stay too upright, biasing too much into knee flexion, therefore not letting ourselves bend over as we properly need to. It can be from a lack of ankle range of motion, in which case I'd recommend doing some deep bodyweight squats, narrow stance and knees forward to work the ankle range of motion. And it can simply be from going too fast and losing control, in which case slow down. Now, all of these aspects that are required for good descent can be reinforced by variations. Pause squats in the hole can force us to keep good midfoot balance in the hole, but if we aren't controlling the bounce well, we want to work that. In which case, I like pause squats above parallel. You go all the way down, bounce out of the hole, and pause about 2 to 3 inches above parallel. Be strict with this, many people pause higher than they think they are. This lets you practice getting a good bounce, but also controlling it, not allowing this rapid shift in position as we've talked about in this video, or else the pause will punish you. Tempo squats can be good to let you focus on midfoot balance on the descent. Now, tempo squats I find also make people naturally arch their back to stay upright in the descent, but as I talked about before, this can be an issue. But at the same time, one could also view it as a challenge to try and resist this spinal extension. And again, don't do too much tempo work if you have to work on practicing a good bounce. Speaking of bounce, a lot of people tend to accelerate at the bottom of their tempos. This is defeating the point. Make sure you use one consistent speed throughout. So that's basically it. Good morning squats are your body's way of loading the posterior chain more. You can limit it by working your quads, but you will be stronger embracing more hip flexion on the descent and not having a rapid shift in position. Hopefully this video helped you understand the good morning squat in more detail. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And once again, thanks for watching.